Hello and welcome. I just finished playing another game in my attempt to go back to rating 2000 plus on Lichess Rapid. And actually before this game I played another game which my opponent abandoned, so there is nothing much to show there. This game was more interesting, although my opponent did play very quickly, but on the other hand he does have a respectable rating, so it was an interesting game in which I was better and I managed to convert. So he played e4, I responded to d6, going for the Philidor. He played d4, and now we have Philidor with e5. And this time he didn't take, so we didn't go to the endgame, but instead he played rather unusual move d5. So now I have to abandon all of my Philidor structures, knowledge and so forth, and just play f5. The position requires this, and from this moment I'm out of the book. I'm just playing common sense chess. He played f3 here, never play f3, so protecting the pawn, but not a good move, because after I take, which I did in the game, then if he takes, he's exposed to this check, and then later here check, and taking the rook, and so forth. So I think this was a small blunder from his part. He's losing the pawn, at least temporary. So he decided not to take, but instead he played c4. And now I took some time making sure that my king is safe and that I will not run into some crazy attack if I just take the pawn. And my conclusion was that it's safe to take. So I did take the pawn, and now just being a pawn up. I was thinking that he might take with the queen. In this case I will just play queen to f6, and I'm ready to exchange queens because I'm pawn up. The endgame favors me and my king is pretty safe. But here he took with the knight, and I played bishop to g4. So I'm pinning the knight, developing the bishop. There might be some threats in form of e4 and so forth. He unpinned with bishop to e2. And now again I was thinking about this check maybe in the future. So looking at this, I decided to take the knight, thinking that if he takes with the bishop, then I have this check, and after this check this c4 pawn is falling. So he cannot take with the bishop, he has to take with the pawn, which he did. And now this exchange did give him the bishop pair, but I mean, look at his pawn structure, look at his king. I would take black here any day. And now this diagonal being opened, I deliver check, and now he has to move the king, so he decided to play king to d2. And here again, I was thinking what to do. One option was to play knight to d7 and castle long. And then I give it a little bit more thought and decided that my king is safe, I'm not in a hurry to castle, so I played g6, which is actually the best move in this position, if I'm not mistaken, by the engine, with the idea of developing the bishop to h6 with a check. And also this gives me the opportunity to exchange the dark square bishops and deprive him of the bishop pair advantage. So this was the idea. He played knight to c3 here. And now I was thinking that I'm not in a hurry to play h6, and I played knight to f6. And this is the only inaccuracy according to the engine, because the engine here really prefers bishop to h6, which was my original plan, but okay, I thought it's no hurry, let me just develop some pieces. It's not a big mistake, but it is an inaccuracy. So I played knight to f6, he played queen to e1, and now I delivered the check. He played king to c2, and yeah, notice that queen e1 does attack my queen, but yeah, check is forcing move. So here I need to be careful, so first I took the queen, he took back, and then I took the bishop, so he doesn't have the bishop pair anymore, and he took back with his rook. So I said in the beginning that my opponent was playing very quickly, and you can see his time, he's 16 minutes. He has more time than he had when we started the game, and this is move 14. And on the other hand, if you look my time, I'm not in a hurry, I'm taking my time to think, so this is one of the reasons why I have the better position here. And now again it's my turn to move, so I was considering moves like knight to d7, completing the development, but then I didn't like the prospect of him coming to b5, so I played a6, prophylactic. And again very quickly here he played f4. And for me this looks like a very critical move to be played so quickly. But okay, I guess he knew what he was doing. So I guess the idea was to sacrifice this pawn and then deliver some kind of discovered check. I don't see any material threat, but it could be annoying to have him place his bishop on e6. So I just didn't want to complicate things. I finally played this knight b to d7. Now if he takes the pawn, I can take back with the knight. Now my opponent played h4. I guess trying to open some files here on the king side and play with his rooks here. So I decided to castle short. And there are two reasons why I castled short. First one is that now I'm putting the rook on the open file and I will make some pressure on this pawn. And the second thing, if he really wants to attack my pawns, then I want to have my king here who can help holding the position here on the king side. And now again, very quickly, he played f5, which I don't really understand the idea because this is just giving up the pawn and there is no compensation. I don't see any compensation in giving up the pawn, not even the initiative. So I just took the pawn and he played h5. And now I evaluated that the struggle will be about the g file. So I attack my king on h8. The king is on the dark square, so I don't need to be afraid of the attack of the bishop. And now my idea is to claim the g file. Now he decided to play on the other side of the board and he played b4, again very quickly. And here I did spend a little time to check for this c5 and b5 breaks. I concluded that nothing dangerous will happen if he tries one of these breaks, so I just claimed the file with rook to g8. He now played rook to f1, and also at this moment he's starting to slow down, so I guess he realizes that the position is not very good for him, so I would say that from this move he's starting to use his time on the clock. So now he's hitting my pawn, so I just push the pawn, everything is safe here. And now he plays bishop to d3, attacking my pawn. So there is a small trap here, so if I were to take this pawn, which is now free, he could play rook to h1, hitting my knight, and then if I move the knight, he can, well, deliver checkmate here on h7, although I have several ways of defending this knight. I can bring another knight here, I can bring a rook here to defend, but it's too complicated and too dangerous, so I didn't do any of this. Instead, I just penetrated with the rook. So rook g2 check, he moved his king, and then I bring another rook on the g file. So I'm just trying to keep this simple. I have 2 pawns extra, I don't need any complications. I want to penetrate with my rooks, control the file, keep my majority here and just slowly win this game. And now he played another tricky move, bishop to f5, hitting my knight. So this means again that if I move my knight, he'll take another knight, so I need to be careful. And also I guess he's eyeing this e4 square all the time for his knight, so there could also be some tricks because this knight is now guarding the knight on d7, so I have to be careful not to slip here. But at this point everything is holding up, so I played rook to h2, attacking this pawn finally, which can be now safely taken. So he played rook to h1, and I was happy to exchange one rook. So the rooks were exchanged, and now I played rook to g5, hitting his bishop and also hitting the pawn. So there is nothing much he can do. He has to take the knight. I took the knight back. And now he played knight to e4, activating the knight, hitting my rook. But this is not a problem for me. I just play rook to g2. My rook is very active, and you can see when the piece is on this third diagonal square for the knight, this means that knight needs 4 moves to attack this piece. So this rook here is perfectly safe from this knight here. And now my opponent decided to try some kind of counterplay with a4. And here again I spent some time to see that these breaks are not dangerous, and they are not. So I played king to g7, now activating my king, and also with the intention of putting the knight on f6 and challenging his knight. And now things become a little bit more interesting. He plays c5 here, I play knight to f6, and now he's trying another trick. So he took the pawn and he is letting me take the knight. But of course if I play the knight, Then the winning move is d7, and there is no way I can stop his pawn from promoting. So here, after c takes d6, I didn't take the knight, but I took the pawn, and now he took the pawn back, and now this pawn is free, so I took the pawn, and he took the pawn. And I calculated all this before I played here knight to f6, so I saw that knight to f6 can win a pawn, but it also simplifies the position very much for me, and still I have two passed pawns. So this wasn't a blunder, I was ready to give up the pawn. So this is what happened. And now it's time to start pushing these pawns. So f3, rook f1, trying to stop my pawn, but now just f2. He plays knight to c5, going for my pawn on a6, but here I just play knight to e3, hitting his rook. And now if he moves his rook, I'll just promote, and he will have to give up the rook. The question is, will I be able to stop these two pawns once he gives up the rook? And this is not so trivial because, as you can see, I cannot bring my rook so quickly to the game because this square is taken and the king is on the way. So some calculation is here necessary to make sure that I can stop his two passed pawns. And he did do something similar, so he took the pawn, I took with the rook, and now he played b5. Again, I think knight takes a6 would give him better chances, but after I took the pawn, he took back, I played knight to d5, and now it's obvious that I am in time to stop the pawn. First of all, I'm stopping it right now, and secondly, I can just easy bring my rook here to stop the pawn, and then I will be left with two pawns which can advance. So at this moment, my opponent threw the towel and resigned the game. So it was a good game from my part. I do regret that my opponent played so quickly. Maybe if he were to play slowly, it would be more interesting games. But okay, I did manage to score some points by winning the game, and now I have to go on. So thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Cheers!